why would upgrading, to the absolute most advanced, highest resolution smartphone camera on the market actually make an expert photographer's pictures worse?
Right. I mean, it seems entirely counterintuitive.
Yeah,
We
totally.
are just so conditioned to believe that better specs automatically equal a better user experience.
That is the whole promise of the tech industry, right?
Yeah.
You buy the shiny new device and you expect it to instantly solve your problems, uh, speed up your workflow, and just seamlessly upgrade your life. But today, we are exploring the profound friction of an upgrade. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission today, for you listening right now, is to unpack this really fascinating paradox hidden inside the technology most of us carry in our pockets every single day.
Exactly. And we are looking at a highly specific piece of source material for this. It is an entry from a series called Notes on Photography, specifically Part 246, which was published on July 14th, 2026, by a creator named Ang.
Yeah, and just the fact that we are on part 246 tells you we are dealing with a seasoned practitioner here.
Oh, absolutely.
This is someone who obsessively documents their creative process. The premise of the note is straightforward. Ang recently upgraded their mobile phone camera. And, on paper, it is a massive win.
Right. Huge.
Higher resolution, a dedicated telephoto lens, sophisticated computational processing. It is, by all technical metrics, a vastly superior piece of hardware. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Moving to this new device is essentially like trading in a classic manual transmission car for a fully autonomous self-driving vehicle.
That is a great way to put it.
Right, like, yes, you get to your destination flawlessly every time, but you suddenly realize you have lost the tactile feedback of the road.
Yeah.
The machine is making thousands of micro adjustments for you, and your old driving habits are completely obsolete. So despite having this quote-unquote better technology, Ang is actually struggling to maintain their established photographic style.
What's fascinating here is that we often view technological advancements as purely additive. We operate under this assumption that a new tool simply overlays onto our existing workflow, improving the output while leaving our habits basically untouched.
Right, like it just makes what we already do faster or sharper.
Exactly. But the reality Ang is documenting is that advanced technology actually demands physical and psychological accommodation. It requires us to fundamentally change our behaviors to meet the machine halfway.
Wow, meet the machine halfway. I like that.
Yeah, the tool does not just work for you. You actually have to learn how to operate within the new constraints of the tool.
And the most jarring constraint Ang describes isn't even software related yet. It is this massive shift in physical space. So a core part of Ang's established style relies on macro photography.
Right, those incredibly detailed, extreme close-up shots of tiny subjects.
Exactly. And with previous setups, they used a wide lens or a dedicated macro lens. But this new phone forces them to capture macro shots using a telephoto lens instead.
Which completely upends the spatial relationship between the photographer and the subject.
Right. And let me push back on how this is framed in the notes for a second, because this fundamentally challenges my understanding of the medium. When you think of macro photography, the defining characteristic is intimacy.
Oh, entirely.
You are physically hovering inches away from a dewdrop or like a metallic beetle. You are literally in the subject's environment.
Yeah.
But Ang notes they can no longer physically get close. They have to shoot from a significant distance using the telephoto compression. Doesn't shooting from a foot or two away completely change the artist's connection to what they're capturing?
That tension is the exact crux of the issue. The intimacy of proximity is replaced by the clinical detachment of magnification.
Right.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, constraints introduced by modern hardware often force completely unexpected human adaptations.
Like what?
Well, let's look at the actual optical physics of what Ang is fighting against here. The telephoto lens fundamentally changes the minimum focusing distance.
Right, because you can't just shove a telephoto lens against a flower and expect it to actually focus.
Precisely, and that is due to how light behaves. A telephoto lens uses a complex array of glass elements to bend light and compress the field of view, which makes distant objects appear closer.
Okay, that makes sense.
But to achieve that optical convergence, the light rays need physical distance to travel and cross before hitting the digital sensor.
Ah, I see.
So if you move the lens too close to the subject, the light rays literally cannot mathematically converge in time. The result is just total blur.
So Ang is basically trapped. They can't get physically close due to the minimum focal distance of the glass, but the notes also highlight that relying too heavily on digital zoom to bridge that gap introduces heavy degradation.
Exactly. So they are forced into this very fragile optical middle ground. They must find the exact millimeter of distance where the telephoto lens can achieve crisp focus without crossing the threshold into optical blur or computational noise.
That sounds incredibly stressful.
It is. And because it is a telephoto lens, we also have to consider the magnification of movement. A wide-angle lens is generally forgiving of a shaky hand.
Sure, you can wobble a bit and the picture is still fine.
Right. But a telephoto lens, by compressing the field of view, exponentially magnifies every tiny vibration.
Oh, wow.
A slight breeze, a natural human tremor, or even a heavy heartbeat literally becomes a seismic event on the camera sensor.
Which leads to what I think is the most absurd, dryly hilarious detail in the entire source text. To combat this intense magnification of microtremors, Aang basically has to abandon whatever natural posture they previously used.
Yes, this part is amazing.
Right. To stabilize this million-dollar marvel of optical engineering, Aang has to pull their elbows tight against their ribs and press both hands firmly into their own stomach.
The human tripod.
The human tripod. I find the dry irony of this so incredibly compelling. You have this sleek, futuristic piece of 2026 technology, packed with gyroscopes and optical image stabilization. And yet the ultimate stabilizing mechanism required to make it function is a photographer's breathing, fleshy abdomen.
It really is funny.
It is a highly awkward physical workaround to a highly advanced technological feature.
It perfectly illustrates the shift in human-computer interaction as devices become more sophisticated.
Yeah.
The margin for error shrinks drastically.
Yeah, that makes sense.
With older, less capable macro lenses, the hardware was the bottleneck. You held the phone normally, got close, and accepted whatever resolution the sensor could manage.
Right, the phone was doing its best.
Exactly. But now the hardware is so immensely powerful and sensitive that the human body itself becomes the bottleneck.
Wow, the human body is the bottleneck.
Yeah, the machine is too delicate for natural human physiology, so the human must artificially rigidify themselves.
So you upgrade your phone, and as a direct result, you have to upgrade your posture. You do all this physical contortion, standing far away, holding your breath, bracing against your gut, just to get the raw optical capture.
Just to get the baseline image, yes.
But the notes make it clear that the physical capture is merely the first half of the struggle. Because once the shutter clicks, the camera software instantly takes over.
Right, the computational aftermath.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Aang points out that the new camera utilizes incredibly aggressive default post-processing. And this is where the trade-off of control really becomes apparent.
It is a massive shift in agency.
Right, the device is no longer just capturing photons of light. It is actively making creative decisions. Aang explicitly notes that the resulting shots are definitely more dramatic.
Dramatic is the key word there.
Yeah, the software is aggressively applying heavy vignetting, isolating the subject with intense bokeh, and drastically increasing color vibrancy.
The phone is essentially running the image through a sophisticated suite of professional grading techniques in the millisecond between the shutter click and the image appearing on the screen.
But I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. From a consumer standpoint, doesn't that fundamentally democratize good photography?
It does, for the vast majority of people.
Right, because most people want their photos to look dramatic, vibrant, and professionally blurred without having to learn complex editing software. So why is an expert photographer complaining about a device doing the heavy lifting for them?
This raises an important question regarding the commoditization of aesthetics. For the average user, democratization is the goal. We want the easy win.
Of course we do.
But for an artist like Aang, aesthetic decisions are the actual language of their craft. To understand the friction, we really need to look at how this post-processing actually works.
Okay, let's hear it.
This isn't just a simple color filter like the old days. Modern smartphone cameras utilize image signal processors driven by neural networks.
It is AI.
Effectively, yes. When Aang takes a photo, the camera runs semantic segmentation. It identifies what is a flower, what is a leaf, what is the background. It builds a full 3D depth map in real time.
That is just wild.
It is. And the bokeh Aang mentions isn't primarily optical blur from the lens anymore. It is computational blur applied mathematically to the pixels the software deems to be the background.
It is not capturing reality at all. It is rendering an interpretation of reality.
Exactly. And the algorithm has a hard-coded definition of what makes an image dramatic. It dictates the fall off of the vignette and the saturation levels of the greens and reds.
Right.
Historically, a photographer spent hours in a darkroom or in digital editing suites intentionally tweaking those specific variables. They chose how dark to make the corners to guide the viewer's eye.
But now an engineer in a laboratory has decided the baseline for drama.
Yes, and the software aggressively paves over the photographer's raw capture with that predefined aesthetic.
And because the software is doing all of this heavy lifting automatically, Aang realizes their personal post-processing workflow has been entirely cannibalized. I mean, this experienced creator writing their 246th note on the medium is now reduced to doing exactly one thing after taking the photo, just adding a watermark.
That is a staggering reduction in creative agency.
It really is.
The traditional workflow of capturing, developing, and refining has just been completely collapsed into a single button press.
And it introduces this wild philosophical friction around the watermark itself. I mean, think about it. A watermark is fundamentally a claim of authorship. It is a visual stamp that says, I made this. This is my artistic vision.
Right.
But if you are using a tool that mathematically calculates the focal distance, neural networks the depth map, synthetically blurs the background, artificially darkens the corners, and boosts the color saturation, what exactly are you watermarking? Are you claiming ownership of the composition you framed while standing there like a human tripod? Or are you just signing your name at the bottom of an algorithm's painting-by-numbers canvas?
It forces us to really reevaluate the definition of authorship in the computational age.
Yeah.
When the aesthetic layer is automated, the technical execution is commoditized. A perfectly exposed, vibrant, sharply focused image is no longer a testament to the photographer's skill. It is simply the baseline output of the machine.
Which is crazy to think about.
It is.
Hmm?
Therefore, the burden of creativity shifts entirely to composition, subject selection, and timing. Aang is struggling because the visual signature they use to painstakingly craft manually is now being overwritten by a generic, albeit highly competent algorithmic signature.
The camera basically went from being a passive tool to an active co-author.
Exactly.
But despite all of this, the loss of physical intimacy, the ridiculous human tripod posture, the aggressive computational rendering, I am honestly struck by the tone of Aang's notes. It isn't a manifesto against modern technology.
No, not at all.
It reads like a very clinical, objective field notebook. Aang even concedes that the overall quality of the photos has improved significantly.
That objectivity is crucial here. Aang is not rejecting the tool, they are just documenting the turbulence of adaptation.
Right.
They recognize the objective improvements in resolution and dynamic range, but they are highly attuned to the behavioral tax those improvements demand.
And that brings us to the photo walk. Aang concludes the note by stating they are withholding a final verdict on this new camera. They explicitly mention they won't fully know how to evaluate the device until they take it on a dedicated photo walk in the coming weeks.
Which is a very smart approach.
Yeah, they are treating this current frustration as just a transitional phase.
A photo walk is the perfect testing ground. It implies moving through an uncontrolled environment, allowing the surroundings to dictate the subjects, rather than trying to force the new equipment into the rigid templates of past habits.
Getting out of the studio.
Exactly. In a controlled setting, the friction of the new telephoto lens is glaring. But out in the wild, the extended reach of that lens might open up entirely new compositional possibilities that Aang hasn't even considered yet.
It is the realization that mastering a new paradigm doesn't happen the moment you peel the plastic off the screen. You have to take the tech out into the messiness of the real world and see how it behaves when you aren't actively fighting it.
It is a continuous negotiation. The machine has imposed new rules, minimum focal distances, aggressive depth mapping algorithms. Aang is stepping back to figure out how their creative vision can operate within, or perhaps subvert, those new rules.
So for you listening, let's pull these threads together and synthesize the core takeaways from Aang's Part 246 note. We began with the universal expectation of an upgrade, the idea that a newer, more powerful tool will seamlessly elevate our work.
Right.
But Aang's field notes reveal that significant technological upgrades always exact a toll in the form of trade-offs.
You gain capability, but you lose familiarity.
Exactly. You gain high-resolution sensors, computational depth mapping, and instant dramatic aesthetics. But in exchange, Aang lost the physical intimacy of hovering over a macro subject. They lost the manual control over their post-processing workflow, watching their distinct aesthetic get replaced by an engineer's definition of vibrancy. They even lost their natural physical posture, forced to adopt the human tripod technique just to stabilize the glass.
The enduring insight from this source material is the sheer necessity of patience when confronting that trade-off.
Patience is key, yeah.
Integrating new, complex information or adopting a disruptive technological paradigm is inherently uncomfortable. It forces you to abandon the hard-won muscle memory that previously made you feel competent.
Right, you go back to feeling like a novice.
Exactly. Aang could have easily dismissed the new phone, complaining that it ruined their style. Instead, they leaned into the awkwardness. They mathematically found the new focusing distance. They accepted the physical absurdity of bracing against their stomach. And crucially, they are reserving ultimate judgment until they can truly test the human-machine negotiation on a future photo walk.
It requires a profound amount of humility to let a shiny new piece of technology make you feel like a clumsy beginner again. You have to be willing to stand in a public park, contorting your torso to take a picture of a leaf, knowing that the software is going to aggressively edit the photo before you even see it.
It challenges us to examine our own workflows. When the tools we rely on change, we must ask ourselves what internal habits we are willing to dismantle in order to harness that new potential.
So what does this all mean? We started by talking about the shock of moving from a manual transmission to a self-driving car. But looking at Aang's experience, the implications go far beyond just learning new controls. When our technology becomes so incredibly advanced that it automatically adds the vibrancy, the focus, and the drama for us, do we stop being the creator of the image and simply become the human tripod holding the lens? It is something to keep in mind the next time you point a device at the world and let the algorithms do the heavy lifting. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.